Today, my shower is blue. No, wait. Was that yesterday? Or was it tomorrow? Last year? I don't remember. And it doesn't matter. Time is meaningless. I trust you're familiar with that concept, aren't you? At least on a philosophical level. It is unfortunate that you are painfully unaware of how viscerally accurate it is. I'm sorry, I'm not making sense. I'm trying to start from the beginning. Not because it's the best way to tell the story, but because it is the only way that you will be able to understand. And it's very difficult to do that when you don't know what the beginning is. So, we will start with this. My shower is blue. Not the tiles, of course. Those are white. The shower head and controls are silver. But the shower water, is blue. I vaguely remember being surprised by that. It was water striking against my skin. The texture was exactly the same, so I knew it couldn't be something else. It just looked like someone had poured blue food coloring into it. I was annoyed because I couldn't wash it off. How could I? You wash things with water. The water was blue. Do you see my dilemma? I got out of the shower and I looked in the mirror. I was blue, and that was a bad thing because I had to go to work. I worked as a receptionist at some company that used to be very important to me, for some man that I used to think was quite handsome. I don't find people attractive anymore. Don't ask me why. The why never matters. Anyway, so there I was, in front of my mirror, blue as blue can be. And then, slowly, I started to be less blue. And less and less. The blue color seeped in through my skin down to my veins. They pulsed an electric blue for a few minutes before that faded too. Well, that was alarming. It was, in fact, very alarming. I remember having a panic attack on the bathroom floor, wondering if I was hallucinating. But the shower water was still running, and it was still blue, and I knew it was terribly real, and I didn't understand what was happening to me. But I was a different sort of person then. And after a while, I remembered that I had work, so I calmed down and dressed and drove into the office. Isn't that strange? Life as I knew it had ended quite suddenly, but I amended that by simply pretending it hadn't. I went to work. The man I liked wore a blue tie. It made the incident seem a little less scary. I stopped caring about it, even as I went home and cleaned up the watery mess I'd left in the shower during my little breakdown. That night, I had a dream. In my dream, I was in my shower, pulling the tiles away with my fingers. Except they weren't fingers anymore. Not in the sense of what you're thinking. Really, I never noticed how closed-minded people can be until my change. What I was using to pry the tiles off were long and pointed and very, very strong. They didn't break like fingernails as I pried the wall to pieces and peered over to the other side. Behind my shower was a void of black. Mostly. It didn't surprise me. What did surprise me, at first, was the giant blue mass attached to my shower head. It was the same blue as what had seeped into my veins that very morning. It was textured and shaped a little like a worm, if worms had long, thin tentacles slithering across the walls. I noticed, with a start, that there were walls. They were as black as the surrounding darkness, but the way the tentacles molded to them revealed their shape. "Who are you?" I asked, as if I didn't already know. I did know, of course. I just didn't know that I knew. Knowing is, after all, a funny thing. It shifted a little in its place as it sensed my voice. Its body was almost gelatinous. I wanted to taste it. I watched as it shifted and squirmed, and then a spray of water erupted from within its body, forced out of my poor abused shower head. Blue water. Blue entity. Blue everywhere. I was rather starting to like the color blue. After a moment, I became terribly embarrassed, as though I had stumbled on a moment of great privacy. I walked back into my shower through the hole I'd created, only to turn around and find that said hole had disappeared. My shower tiles were all intact. Maybe I should have been disappointed. All that hard work reversed. But I was relieved. The blue washed over me again. As soon as I stepped out of the water, this time my blood and veins absorbed the color, and I fell back into bed. I woke moments later from the dream. Only, you and I both know it wasn't a dream at all, was it? When I got up the next morning, I couldn't go to work. This was mainly because something blue had started to grow out of my arms, and they wiggled and jerked when I tried to put a shirt on. But it was also because I worried the blue creature in my shower would be lonely if I left, so I called into work sick. I still thought that mattered, at least on some level, I guess, and crawled into the shower, turning on the water so I could keep bathing myself in blue. Sitting in the shower was when time started to lose meaning for me, when I realized that changes in light were just that. Changes. They weren't indications of anything more profound. So I sat in the shower and didn't worry about how long or what or why. I sat and soaked in all that pretty blue. But I forgot that other people operate under the illusion of time. The water had turned blistering cold when I heard the knocking on my apartment door. I didn't much care because I couldn't feel it anymore anyway. It didn't even touch my skin. There was a new skin covering me. A blue one. It was beautiful. The tentacles sprouting from my arms and stomach and neck were beautiful too. They draped down me like a sparse fringe. I could even move them like muscles. I liked it very much. But the insistent knocking interrupted my examination. I was a little annoyed. Here I was, loving my body for the very first time in my life, and I couldn't get a moment's peace. I trudged to the door, hearing something begin to shift behind me, but I didn't pay it any mind. I knew what it was, and it was nothing to be afraid of. I flung the door open and came face to face with some cops. That's how it always is, isn't it? People don't come to check up on you. If you stop showing up at work for a few days, or a few weeks, they just send the cops to check if you're crazy or not. Well, I'm not crazy, although the cops seem to think otherwise. He looked very pale, staring at me, and I wondered if he was sick. That was the younger one. I guessed he hadn't been an officer very long.
What happened to you?
His older partner. He had been on the force much longer. I knew it by my instincts, but he was still pretty pale. He was staring at my skin, at my body. It annoyed me. In the past, I might have been uncomfortable, but it didn't bother me like that anymore. Instead, I was annoyed that they were keeping me from going about my business. I tried to open my mouth and tell them as such, but my throat couldn't form the words anymore. Instead, what came out of my mouth was something a little more garbled, a little more guttural. It made perfect sense to me, the language of something pure and natural, of course. But they didn't seem to understand it. It didn't matter, though, because soon their attention shifted to something behind me.
Oh God, what the fuck? What the fuck is that?
Of course, I knew what it was, but I didn't really have time to answer them. A blue tentacle shot out from behind me, wrapping around both their throats and crushing them together. It dragged them inside, and I shut the door behind them. It wasn't really necessary, not anymore, but old habits are hard to break. When I turned back, one of the bodies had already begun to disappear into the blue creature's maw. The man was screaming something awful. I found that a little strange. I pried the other officer, the younger one, from the thing's tentacles and touched him almost tentatively with mine. He began to shriek and scream as my flesh burned his. I could see it eating him away, down to the bone. It was fascinating. The blue certainly never hurt me like that. And that's when the final piece clicked into place. When I really understood what the creature was, and why it was here, and why it chose me. Questions that, once answered, ceased to matter. I watched as the creature devoured the policeman, and I followed suit. It was easy to unhinge my jaw. I'm sure in the past it would have been quite painful, but as it was, it felt natural. I ate him slowly at first, because he was so very large, and my throat was so small. But my flesh broke his body down and made him easier to digest. With each bite, I felt myself growing bigger and bigger. My throat expanded, and my jaw creaked ever wider. It was intoxicating, that feeling of power. Eventually, the body was gone. The blue creature stared at me as I finished it, questioning if I finally understood. And I did. I understood what the blue thing was. It was the universe. At least a part of it. But the part and the whole are one and the same, and it chose me because I, too, am the universe. We all are, aren't we? Well, except the bad ones. The bad ones are the ones who destroy the universe, who upset its balance. The bad ones are the ones whose flesh is burned by our purity. The bad ones need to be taken out of the equation. As soon as it saw that I understood, it began to slither away, pulling itself along by its tentacles. It was swallowed up by a hole in the wall, a hole that disappeared once it had completed its purpose. I knew that it had gone to seek out the rest of the universe, just as it had sought me. This is the last missive that I write. I used to enjoy writing very much. In fact, it fulfilled something in me. But I don't need it anymore, because now I am whole. I am completion. I am not the beginning and the end. I am the destruction of endings and beginnings. Besides, it's becoming very hard to write, what with the hands and tentacles. Computers just weren't made for users like me. So I am off to discover more of the universe. Perhaps in a kitchen sink this time, or a bathtub, or, yes, even a shower. I think the shower is best. So remember, when your shower turns blue, and it will, I assure you, in a matter of your understanding of time, don't run from it. Don't fight it. Don't deny it. It's beautiful to be blue. It's beautiful to belong to the universe.